Think back to when you were 8 years old, and there was that one thing that you wanted more than anything in the world. Maybe it was a pony, or a new Barbie doll, or that really cool bike. For me, it was a dog. I begged my parents for ages to get me a dog, but they just kept saying no. I tried everything, but they wouldn't budge. Flash forward 12 years later, I still don't have a dog, but now I'm a psychology student, and I know that if I had used the psychology of persuasion, I could have gotten exactly what I wanted. Persuasion is a communication technique that attempts to influence the way people think, feel, or act. Now, it's important to understand that persuasion is not imposing your ideas on someone else or forcing them to do what you want. Being persuaded is ultimately a personal decision. The persuader does whatever they can to convince the person to agree with what they're saying. But in the end, the person needs to make their own decision about whether or not to agree with the persuader. So, as the persuader, it's your job to figure out how you can successfully convince someone to be persuaded by your argument and switch your opinion to agree with you. So I'm going to teach you 2 persuasion techniques that can help you get whatever you want. Foot in the door technique and lowball technique. By using these techniques, you're in essence pressing a hypothetical button that gets the gears going in the person's brain and makes them reevaluate their opinions on whatever you're talking about. The first technique is foot in the door. Foot in the door technique convinces someone to agree with your desired request by first asking for a smaller request. So you can start by asking for something little and trivial that's very manageable to provide. Then, over time, you can gradually increase your demands until you get to a point where your original grand request now seems like a logical next step. So say, for example, your neighbor's just got a new dog. You can start by asking your parents if you can go and play with the neighbor's dog. A few days later, you ask if you can take the neighbor's dog for a walk. A while later, you ask if you can pet sit the neighbor's dog. And then finally, you ask for a dog of your own. By starting small and building up your requests, you've now reached a point where you can ask for what you originally wanted all along without it seeming like a drastic jump. Your parents are more likely to be persuaded at this point because asking for a dog now seems logical based off of everything else that you've done. You're no longer going from 0 to 100 in one jump. You're now only going from 90 to 100, which is much more reasonable. So now that your parents are warming up to the idea of getting a dog, you can hit them with the lowball technique. So lowball technique presents an attractive original offer, tempting people to commit. After they commit, however, the terms of the request change, making the original offer not necessarily quite as tempting anymore. So when you're trying to convince your parents to buy you a dog, you can start by just showing them the cost of buying the dog and food alone. This wouldn't be an inordinately large number, so they'd agree to get you a dog. It wouldn't be until after you buy the dog that you would then add up the costs of shots, supplies, accessories, training, and everything else. You tempted your parents to commit by showing them an attractive low price. Well, you were really hiding the true cost of everything else that would be associated if they were to commit. So these 2 techniques work because of 2 human instincts: the desire for favorable self-perception and the desire to be consistent with our behaviors. We want to have a good perception of ourselves, and we want other people to think highly of us as well. So, in both of these techniques, by saying yes at the beginning, the person then pats themselves on the back for being so nice and reasonable and charitable. Then, when the terms of the request change, they now feel obliged to be consistent with their behaviors. They don't want to seem fickle for refusing to continue with what they agreed with, or flaky for trying to back out of it. So they continue to agree in order to maintain their reputation. So if you combine foot in the door technique and lowball technique, you press the hypothetical persuasion button, encouraging your parents to consider the plausibility of what you're asking for. Asking for a dog now seems reasonable because of the way that you framed your request using these techniques. Your parents' opinions start to sway and they think, getting a dog's not a bad idea. After mulling it over, they decide you presented a very logical argument and they like it and they have been convinced. You've successfully persuaded your parents and got yourself a dog. Thank you.